Greetings, Soul Tribe. This is Spirit, your cosmic mentor with Harmonious Living Mindset. Welcome to my channel, where you're going to find tools for a more harmonious mind, body, and spirit. Today's tool, Harmonious Living Mindset tool, is going to be the original Fuzzy Tale by Claude Steiner. Okay, I'm going to share a story with you. And for those of you that it resonates with, I think you'll find some really valuable gems in here. I know that this has been just lovely in my life, okay? So here we go. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there lived two very happy people called Tim and Maggie, with two children called John and Lucy. To understand how happy they were, you have to understand how things were in those days. You see, in those days, everyone was given at birth a small, soft, fuzzy bag. Anytime a person reached into this bag, they were able to pull out a warm fuzzy. Warm fuzzies were very much in demand because whenever somebody was given a warm fuzzy, it made them feel warm and fuzzy all over. People who didn't get warm fuzzies regularly were in danger of developing a sickness in their back, which caused them to shrivel up and die. In those days, it was very easy to get warm fuzzies. Anytime that somebody felt like it, they might walk up to you and say, "I'd like to give you a warm fuzzy." You would then reach into your bag and pull out a fuzzy the size of a little girl's hand. As soon as the fuzzy saw the light of day, it would smile and blossom into a large, shaggy, warm fuzzy. You then would lay it on the person's shoulder, head, or lap, and it would snuggle up and melt right against their skin and make them feel good all over. People were always asking each other for warm fuzzies, and since they were always given freely, getting enough of them was never a problem. There were always plenty to go around, and as a consequence, everyone was happy and felt warm and fuzzy most of the time. One day, a bad witch became angry because everyone was so happy and no one was buying potions and salves. The witch was very clever and devised a very wicked plan. One beautiful morning, the witch crept up to Tim while Maggie was playing with their daughter and whispered in his ear, "See here, Tim? Look at that. Look at all the fuzzies that Maggie is giving to Lucy. You know, if she keeps it up, eventually she's going to run out and there won't be any left for you." Tim was astonished. He turned to the witch and said, "Do you mean to tell me that there isn't enough warm fuzzies in our bag each time we reach into them?" And the witch said, "No, absolutely not. And once you run out, that's it. You don't have any more." With this, the witch flew away on a broom, laughing and cackling all the way. Tim took this to heart and began to notice every time Maggie gave up a warm fuzzy to somebody else. Eventually, he got very worried and upset because he liked Maggie's warm fuzzies very much and did not want to give them up. He certainly did not think it was right for Maggie to be giving and spending all her warm fuzzies on the children and on other people. He began to complain every time he saw Maggie giving a warm fuzzy to somebody else. And because Maggie liked him very much, she stopped giving warm fuzzies to other people very often and reserved them for him. The children watched this and soon began to get the idea that it was wrong to give up warm fuzzies anytime you asked or felt like it. They too became very careful. They would watch their parents closely, and whenever they felt that one of their parents was giving too many fuzzies to others, they also began to object. They began to feel worried whenever they gave away too many warm fuzzies, even though they found a warm fuzzy every time they reached into their bag. They reached in less and less and became more and more stingy. Soon, people began to notice the lack of warm fuzzies, and they began to feel less warm and less fuzzy. They began to shrivel up, and occasionally, people would die from the lack of warm fuzzies. More and more people went to the witch to buy potions and salves, even though they didn't seem to work. Well, the situation was getting very serious indeed. The bad witch who had been watching all of this didn't really want the people to die, since dead people couldn't buy their salves and their lotions and potions. So a new plan was devised. Everyone was given a bag that was very similar to the fuzzy bag, except this one was cold while the fuzzy bag was warm. Inside of the witch's bag were cold pricklies. These cold pricklies did not make people feel warm and fuzzy, but made them feel cold and prickly instead. But they did prevent people's backs from shriveling up. So from then on, every time somebody said, "I want a warm fuzzy," people who were worried about depleting their supply would say, "Well, I can't give you a warm fuzzy, but would you like a cold prickly?" Sometimes two people would walk up to each other thinking that they could get a warm fuzzy, but one or the other of them would change their minds and they would wind up giving the other a cold prickly. So the end result was that while very few people were dying, a lot of people were still very unhappy and feeling very cold and prickly. The situation got very complicated because since the coming of the witch, there were less and less warm fuzzies going around. So warm fuzzies, which were used to be thought of as free as air, which air's not free, by the way, anymore, became extremely valuable. This caused people to do all sorts of things in order to obtain them. Before the witch had appeared, people used to gather in groups of 3 or 4 or 5, never caring too much who was giving warm fuzzies to whom. After the coming of the witch, though, people began to pair off and to reserve all of their warm fuzzies for each other exclusively. People who forgot themselves and gave a warm fuzzy to someone else would immediately feel guilty about it because they knew that their partner would probably resent the loss of the warm fuzzy. People who could not find a generous partner had to buy their warm fuzzies and had to work long hours to earn the money. Some people somehow became popular and got a lot of warm fuzzies without having to return them. These people would then sell these warm fuzzies to people who were unpopular and needed them to survive. Another thing which happened was that some people would take cold pricklies, which were limitless and freely available, coat them white and fluffy, and pass them on as warm fuzzies. These counterfeit warm fuzzies were really plastic fuzzies, and they caused additional difficulties. For instance, two people would get together and freely exchange plastic fuzzies, which presumably should have made them feel good, but they came away feeling bad instead. Since they thought they had been exchanging warm fuzzies, people grew very confused about this, never realizing that their cold, prickly feelings were really the result of the fact that they had been given a lot of plastic fuzzies. So the situation was very, very dismal. And it all started because of the coming of the witch who made the people believe that someday, when least expected, they might reach into their warm fuzzy bag and find no more. Not long ago, a young woman with big hips, born under the sign of Aquarius, came to this unhappy land. She seemed not to have heard about the bad witch and was not worried about running out of warm fuzzies. She gave them out freely, even when not asked. They called her the hip woman and disapproved of her because she was giving the children the idea that they should not worry about running out of warm fuzzies. The children liked her very much because they felt good around her, and they began to give out warm fuzzies whenever they felt like it. The grown-ups became concerned and decided to pass a law to protect the children from depleting their supplies of warm fuzzies. The law made it a criminal offense to give out warm fuzzies in a reckless manner without a license. Many children, however, seemed not to care in spite of the law. They continued to give each other warm fuzzies whenever they felt like it, and always when asked. Because there were many, many children, almost as many as many grown-ups. It began to look as if maybe they would have their way. As of now, it's hard to say what will happen. Will the grown-up forces of law and order stop the recklessness of the children? Are the grown-ups going to join with the hip woman and the children in taking a chance that there will always be as many warm fuzzies as needed? Will they remember the days their children are trying to bring back to them when warm fuzzies were abundantly around and in their bag because people gave them away freely? So this is the original warm fuzzy story by Claude Steiner. I hope that you enjoyed it. When asked, we can give warm fuzzies. Okay. There's enough plastic fuzzies going around. There's enough cold pricklies going around. Let's give ourselves those strokes, units of recognition, positive or negative. Let's remember to give ourselves warm fuzzies so that we feel warm and fuzzy and are able to extend that out to others. Okay? Take care. Ciao.